All right, we are back on Thompson to Clark. And thankfully for this week, because not a whole lot of news, though we will have a news segment, but thankfully we have the Willie Mays documentary to talk about. Wow, what a great documentary. Nelson George, who I mostly know through music, through like music journalism. A little bit of hip hop culture journalism. He's a little bit older guy. Probably, I don't know. I think he wrote a book on Michael Jackson in like 1983. Like that's how far he goes back with his journalism. So, but yeah, like kind of unexpected to see him do something like this, but really, really fun stuff. So, why don't we just kick off talking about it? Because you and I both watched it. We we made sure that we watched it so that we could review it for this show. So what'd you think? Oh, I guess overall, our first thoughts, just overall, you watch documentaries here and there. So, you know, what's quality versus like what's Netflix, like, Netflix, not a ton. So some of those Netflix documentaries, they don't like have a ton of source material that they're using.
No, they're just pictures, a lot of pictures, and then just somebody just sitting there talking, and you get bored out of your mind. This was fantastic. I didn't know what to think about going into because like I hadn't heard of the director.
Yeah.
So I was like, but knowing that Shea was attached to John Shea. We knew we were going to hear from Barry Bonds. We knew we were going to hear from John Miller.
You know who was executive producer that I did not know? LeBron James and Mav Carter. I had no idea they were affiliated with this. That was really
they were
cool.
affiliated, and same with Colin Hanks too, Tom Hanks' son, who's a big Giants fan.
Yes.
And then my favorite was Tito Fuentes.
Oh yeah,
and Orlando Cepeda. When those guys start talking too and bringing up old memories and everything. So yeah, I had no idea what to expect going into it. Within the first 5 minutes, I knew, okay, we got something good here. I watched, I watch a lot of music documentaries. I don't delve too much into sports documentaries. I used to. I don't so much anymore because I think the problem is there are so many of them, and I don't want to watch one and then get 2 hours and you're done and go, that was a huge waste of time. So I think I kind of have to like pick and choose. But I knew, Willie Mays, yes, I'm going to watch it. But I thought it was great as a fan of the Giants. You and I, longtime Giants fans, never being able to have seen Willie Mays play either on TV or live or even hear him play on the radio. This was awesome. A lot of the footage that was used really surprised me. It was stuff I had never seen before. And I fell in love with it, and I wanted it. After an hour and 40 minutes, I was like, man, I want more. I want a part two. I want the raw footage, because even that little outro clip that they played where Willie Mays is kind of busting their chops and they're having a good time with
throwing around F-bombs.
Throwing around F-bombs and hard handshakes and talking about arm wrestling. Give me all of that. Give me all the B-roll outtake interview footage. But yeah, it kind of put me there as a fan. I told you the last 30 minutes, you hadn't seen the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes yet. I said that last 30 minutes is very emotional. Barry Bonds, tears in his eyes, talking about his godfather, talking about the home run chase and everything else that he went through. And there was a lot of emotion because you and I, we went through that part of it. We went through watching Barry and Willie kind of come together in those last couple of years, chase down that home run record. It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot to take in. I'm definitely going to be watching it again. I watched just to put in reference here, I watched the Beatles documentary last year when it came out in November. And that was 8+ hours.
Oh yeah.
I'll probably watch that again at some point, but the Willie Mays documentary, absolutely, I will definitely be watching that again.
So the documentary kind of the way that Nelson did it, Nelson George, is he had some sit down stuff with Willie. Now, Willie, how old is Willie at this point?
He's 91, I believe. 91 now.
And, you would think that he may have, lost some sharpness. He may speak a little slower, but the mind is absolutely 100% there. The wit, the biting wit, it's all there. And so you have little clips of Willie talking to Nelson George, the director, and then they go and tell that part of the story. And so it's really well done. It's kind of similar to John Shea's book in that way. I'm just really early in the Shea book, but it's 24 chapters, 24 stories essentially. And
That's cool.
There's a little bit of back and forth with Willie to kind of help tell that story. So love seeing his perspective. And, the thing about Willie for us, for guys our age, is when we were born, it was right after Willie retired. So we didn't get to see him play, but we got to hear about him. And like for my dad's favorite player of all time was Willie Mays. So all I did was hear about Willie Mays growing up. And it was like, oh man, when am I going to get my own Willie Mays? Because nobody really, and then we get Bonds, right? But nobody really matches up to the legend. And, the way that Mays was spoken about in my household was like, he was like a superhero. He's like this heroic figure, right?
Yeah.
And, the best baseball player ever. And then I would kind of look at stats and go, I need to test this out. Is Willie really the best baseball player ever? And you see the 660 home runs. He was when we were born or when we were watching baseball, he was third behind only Aaron and Babe Ruth. Is he now fifth?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, who's ahead of him? So it's Bonds, it's Aaron, it's Babe, and Pujols. Where's A-Rod in this list?
A-Rod is next.
Okay.
Pujols 703, A-Rod 696, Willie Mays 660, and then the kid at 630.
Wow, Griffey's closer than I even remembered. So that, but you saw how hard it was for me. Like I thought about it and I figured it out. But when we were growing up, it was Aaron Ruth Mays, like the back of our hand, right? And so that's how numbers used to work when we were growing up, is we just knew them all. We knew all of the numbers. We knew DiMaggio's hit streak. We knew the Pete Rose number. We knew Cal Ripken's number, all that stuff, because the numbers mattered so much. Nowadays, they don't matter as much, but there's also a lot more history in baseball to remember. So that was that part of it. The legend of Willie Mays, I thought was really good. And then you remember that he lost how many years to the war. And I know Ted Williams was very similar. Like, if Ted Williams didn't lose so much time to the war, his numbers are probably right there with Aaron, Ruth, and Mays at that point. But seeing Willie in his prime as the guy, I totally forgot about that New York Giants and New York Yankees World Series that the Giants lost. I completely forgot that even happened. And then the Vic Wirtz and against the Indians when they weren't favored, and then they win that one. So that's really his title right there, and comes to San Francisco and doesn't get one. But that part of the story was great. Now, the part of the story that I wasn't sure if I wasn't expecting it or I just didn't know enough about this part of Willie was the piece about the civil rights and how Willie was less outspoken than people who came after him. And because of his fame, that frustrated some people because they thought, you could really help us advance. But Willie was taught that he just kind of had to let his game speak, and he didn't feel comfortable with the political stuff. And plus, he was so famous and he was the richest baseball player out there. And so his life is working and he doesn't feel like he's knowledgeable or whatever about everything else. And some people thought that meant to be, well, he just doesn't care. And so that was a very interesting part of the documentary, we got to see Tommy Smith and John Carlos, those statues. They showed San Jose State with those statues. So we are kind of, going to San Jose State, that's just kind of within us is the civil rights piece and understanding that history. But did you know that side of Willie as they were telling the story?
I did not at all. That part kind of surprised me too. But watching it, I totally got it. I totally understand. I mean, everybody's different. That's not who he was. He even said it himself. That's what Martin Luther King does. He's an effective speaker. That is what he does. That's just not me. That's just not what I do. I'm just playing baseball. I'm just playing the game of baseball. And then you saw it in his retirement speech, which I had never seen before. I've shockingly had never seen his retirement speech before. That was absolutely amazing at Shea Stadium. By the way, I was alive for 4 months of Willie Mays' playing career. Just so everybody knows how old I am. for 4 months of his career, I was a little tiny child. But seeing that and him just saying, baseball is a part of my life, and I am a part of baseball, and it tore him apart to retire and to have to walk away from the game. That was his concentration. That was who he
called it a love affair.
A love affair. I mean, that was it. There was nothing else for him but playing the game of baseball, living, breathing baseball. I mean, I understand people can knock him because there was a lot of strife. I mean, there was a lot of pain. There was a lot going on at that time. And they wanted, the outspoken athlete, the outspoken actor, to help put all of this on a platform. But again, that's the wrong guy. It's just, that's not who he was.
Well,
I didn't know all that. It was amazing.
He's a little bit in between because who comes after him is Ali and Bill Russell and Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Those guys come after him. And who's right before him is Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson, the reason why he was chosen was because they said, look, you can't screw this up because you're not just screwing it up for you. And so Jackie Robinson has to take all of this crap and just be like, not ruin this thing and have, this audience which is probably, I mean, I don't know what the Major League Baseball audience was in the early 50s, but at least the audience that they cared about, that they cared not to offend was a white audience. And you had to be okay with those folks to be accepted. And so that, we could integrate. But Willie comes a little bit after that, but he kind of has the same mentality. He was taught, his coach, his manager in the Negro Leagues was like, you can't say anything, you can't, you just have to put your head down and play ball, and you got to take some stuff and you got to be able to deal with it. So that's the way that he was. And so they even showed later in Jackie's life as he retires that he is vocal about Mays not being more outspoken. And I don't know we don't have the context, but my initial reaction was, well, he's still playing. Like you're not playing anymore. So, that seemed a little unfair, but again, I don't understand the context. I'm sure there was way more context than we were told. And then you saw Barry sticking up for him, right? Barry kind of telling the reason and telling his story. I saw Nelson, there was an interview, I think, and he described the father-son and the mentoring relationship with Willie and his manager in the Negro Leagues, kind of really, because Willie's playing as a high school kid with adults. Right. And so just mentoring him, and then Willie having to mentor Bobby and some of the other players. What did you think? Now, this is because you said Tito Fuentes. I think this was really interesting. Mm-hmm. This is not a story that is told in Giants lore that Alvin Dark did not want the Latin ball players to be able to be themselves with the music and with their language. And I don't know if that means Alvin Dark is a racist. They didn't really say it that way. Right. But That was really interesting. That's not a story that we're told when it comes to the history of the San Francisco Giants.
No, not at all. And it's funny you say that because I had heard, I think through, I don't know, stories back in the day, books I had read, but Alvin Dark was kind of he was a tough dude, tough manager, a little hard to get along with sometimes. I think it might have even been my grandmother who had said some choice words about him back in the day. But I remember thinking as I'm watching it, I go, "Oh, there's Alvin Dark," and then they start, talking about Tito Fuentes, and they're interviewing him, and I thought, I thought in my head before that even came up, I wonder how Alvin Dark dealt with all that change.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden he's not managing just white players anymore. He's managing black players, Latino players, and white players. And I wonder how he handled it. And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, we found out how he handled it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very well. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. Because again, as I'm watching it, I remember I've heard some things about Alvin Dark, but I don't remember where. But yeah, that was a little rough part of it.
Nelson George was on a podcast with Larry Wilmer. I got to listen to like 10 minutes of it. I just didn't have enough time today because I wanted to listen to it. But Nelson George said he was a Yankees fan. And Larry Wilmer said, well, yeah, the Yankees were all the white guys, and then the Giants were a lot of black players. And so Nelson George was explaining that how when he's a kid, he's rooting for the Yankees because that's his home team. But the cool teams were the Pirates and the Giants because they had so many African-American players. And for the Giants, they had all the Latin players. And that made them cool to Nelson George in when he's growing up. I thought that was really, really interesting. It's not anything that I really thought of because, we're not there. We didn't grow up during that time frame. But I thought that was pretty amazing. Like, thinking of your team, this is kind of like, what was it? The college basketball team who I think they were in Texas, who they had the first black starting five in college basketball.
Yeah.
And then, you see University of Michigan in the early 90s with the Fab Five, and they start all black freshmen. And so those are like these pioneering teams. I never saw the Giants as that way, and that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, and it's funny too because in the documentary too, they also mentioned that San Francisco at that time was not the progressive that we know it today. Mayor Willie Brown was on there too.
It was really cool to see him.
Yeah, that was awesome. And by the way, I think he's got to be in the Transamerica building, right? The pyramid building, because he was sitting in his office and I kept looking at the side of the window and it was like going at a really hard slope. I go, he's got to be in the cool Transamerica. But what he was saying too is San Francisco at the time was not that progressive. So, and then Willie Mays, of course, we don't want to spoil the whole doc, but the great part about him trying to find a home in San Francisco.
Yes.
And you can't even imagine that nowadays. Anybody could live anywhere in San Francisco. I think, gosh, I haven't been back to the Bay Area since 2006, so I don't know 100%, but I would assume in San Francisco, anybody
it's time, man.
live anywhere. So
it's time to get back and visit.
I know I got to go to a game. I keep talking about it, but I got to go to a game. But yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing when they were talking about how Willie, when the Giants first moved there in '58, just having a hard time finding a home, rocks thrown through their window. I mean, hell, we can't even imagine it because here we are. If Willie Mays moved next door to us, we'd be like, oh my God, yeah. Willie Mays lives next door. What can I bring you something, man? Can I hang out with you? Can I talk baseball? I mean, so it's kind of foreign to us, but we're also not racist. So there's that too. But
the thing about how he bought the house and they wouldn't let him move in, right? Mm-hmm. Because it was homeowners and they did not want an African-American person to own in their neighborhood, and they were trying to move him to a different part of the neighborhood, and he's like, nope, I'm gonna live here. This is the house I want. This is where we're gonna stay. And in order to do that, Then they had to take, the rocks thrown into the glass and all that stuff. And they even talked about his first wife wanting to move back to New York because in Harlem, he's like the guy, right? Like they're sending cars, like they're taking care of him. He's like, he's at the night spot, hanging out, being cool. Willie Mays. They're like, nope, you got to go because you got a game tomorrow, and there's gonna be some trouble in a couple hours. So
that part was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a big historian when it comes to 1950s New York, because of course I'm a big Sinatra fan.
Yeah.
So 1950s New York and the scene and how everything went down. I thought that was really cool, man. How the owner of the club, he would get a call and he would go down there at about 9 o'clock and say, "You got a game tomorrow, Willie. We got a car out back." And he didn't drink and didn't smoke, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but they just didn't want him out late because he probably knew, the club owner probably knew, our bad seeds start to show up after 9 o'clock. So,
yeah, exactly.
They didn't mention that part. Like the bad influencers are probably coming in late at nights.
One thing they didn't cover, and this is a story that we heard when we were younger, is that at some point after he retired, he got like banned from baseball or something, or there was something where he was suspended because I want to say he was involved like as a greeter at a casino or something.
Oh, wow.
I may have that story wrong. But there's been lots of stories like that where after career, right, when you're not making the money anymore, and then what do you do? And I seem to think that there was something going on with him in baseball. But so they talk about the trade back to the Mets, and I don't know if I just never put two and two together. But we were talking about this when the Mets were in the playoffs, how the Mets are the Giants, right? Because the Giants had left, and the Dodgers put together. Like that's the New York Mets, is those two teams that moved to California. And so when Willie comes to the New York Mets, Nelson George described it as like the biggest thing going on in New York. And this is at the end of his career, right? He's long past his prime, but still, because of the fame and because of where he got his start, just a giant story for him to come back to New York. And it seemed like it meant a lot for him as well, because the reason the Giants trade him is because, and now this is how John Miller explains it, and it may be exactly like this, but this seemed a little simplistic to me. But John Miller said, I guess the A's came in 1968, and the Giants were already struggling with the live attendance, and that only hurt it more. So the owner, Horace Stoneham, needed to sell off a lot of the vet pieces that were expensive, and one of those was Mays. But just his acceptance, or his welcoming back to New York, gosh, that was like a hero's welcome. And the crowd loved him. They were showing like a commercial or something where people were just so excited for him to come back. But Nelson George was like, that was all on, all on the radio, all on TV, like all in the newspapers. It was all about Mays, 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 Mays.
Yeah. And, I didn't put two and two together too, speaking of, because I had completely forgotten that the Mets had gone to the World Series in 1973. And that, I didn't realize Willie Mays played in another World Series.
Yeah.
And it was in 1973 against the A's. So that was cool. So the footage from that too, stuff I had never seen before. And then, the emotional talk about him kind of being past his prime, and some outfield issues he had, but it was most likely the son. Reggie Jackson talking about that, because Jackson played against Willie Mays in that
Reggie was excellent.
Yeah,
you don't normally think of Reggie Jackson as like now he was a great interview back in his prime, like because he was so outspoken, but you don't necessarily see him as like someone who's really good on this stuff, because he's always sort of been known as being a little self-centered and sort of about him. But
kind of brash.
He's in the Yankees Dodgers documentary on 30 for 30 on ESPN, which I know you say you're not watching a ton. I've just like you, I've only gotten through about 20 minutes of it because there's so much other stuff to watch. But he's good in that, and then in this as well. I thought Reggie was excellent, man.
Yeah, he was. He brought a lot of emotion to that last part of the last 30 minutes. Like I said, it's just there's so much going on. Barry Bonds, Reggie Jackson, and Reggie Jackson's part was great because, like you said too, it was kind of out of character. You don't see him like that often, where he's compassionate towards another person. We don't know Reggie Jackson. We don't hang out with him day in and day out. I'm sure he's a great, compassionate person, but
I know people who know Reggie, and they don't normally say that, or who may be related to Reggie. And the times that I've talked about it, they didn't necessarily say that about him, but you know, as he's gotten older, like maybe so, right? Maybe he has become a little bit more like that,
or he just loves Willie. I mean, he just loves Willie Mays, and I watching this documentary, you find out there are so many people that just absolutely love Willie Mays.
Yep.
And then again, after watching it too, you completely understand why. So if you have not seen it, I think you could probably do like free previews for HBO Max. Here's something most people probably don't even know that they have, but if you have AT&T and you have AT&T mobile service, you have a cell phone with AT&T, and you have I think it's like the unlimited package, you get HBO Max for free. So look into that. Look at your bill, check it out. If you have the unlimited, then you have HBO Max for free. You just tie your account, you go in, log in, and you've got it for free. So that's how I'm able to watch most stuff on HBO Max. But yeah, I highly recommend. If you're a Giants fan, do not miss it.
Because I'm a giant Bonds fan, even throughout all of the chaos of, you know, the mid 2000s and such. Barry, since he retired, to me, this is just to me, he has changed so much.
Yeah.
Outside of the game of baseball, the way that he speaks about people, the way that he speaks about people he loves, the way he speaks with the Giants, all of that stuff is so positive. And I know people will still find their faults with him because, you know, he's got a resume of some shady things, and I totally get that. But they tell the story of when Larry Baer and Peter McGowan are now in charge of the team. Willie was not a part of the franchise since he retired. So that's like 16 years. Yeah. And they bring him back and they sign him to a lifetime contract, and he's actually their liaison to Bonds. And I kind of wonder if you give them a little bit of truth serum, like what was bringing Willie back into the fold the number one priority, or was bringing Willie back into the fold knowing who his godson was there a little bit of like, you know, this probably makes 50, sense.
50.
Yeah, that probably makes some sense on a couple different levels. But yeah, like awesome. And then Barry comes in, he tells a story of how Willie wanted him to wear the number, and then how baseball didn't let him, all that stuff. And then they get to the end of where, you know, Barry's breaking the records and stuff, and how that means so much to him because of Willie and Barry's dad passing away, all that stuff. So yeah, the last 30 minutes is amazing. And then we get the great Chuck D song. Yes. The amazing Willie Mays, really, really good. It's a short song, it's like 2.5 minutes, but yeah. It's pure Chuck. It's pure hip hop. The instrumentals are amazing. This is great.
It's not the greatest lyric writing in the world.
No.
But it's a tribute to Willie Mays. I mean, it's fun. It's like I said, the beats are cool, man. They sound like I sent you a clip of 1970s, mid 70s Freddie Hubbard, jazz trumpeter. He did a lot of what was called at the time, because he kind of Freddie Hubbard started out as like a bebop jazz artist, but that time he was doing what was called like street jazz. So it was kind of almost like early hip hop beats. And so I almost wonder, I got to look at the samples on that Chuck D song, because it almost sounded like Freddie Hubbard. So I got to go and check that part out.
All right. But if you have not watched it, like Brad said, go figure it away. I mean, plus, you know, if you just sign up for HBO Max for a month, it's worth it just to watch this thing. And there's tons of stuff on HBO Max. But all right, let's quickly, as a way to transition into the news, which is what we're going to talk about next. Let's just go to what we are drinking here. and I'll let
Yeah.
you go first because I've been watching you sip on it, and it looks very nice.
I'm sad. I told my wife before I went on the air, I said, I'm sad because look how
Oh
I
wow!
killed it. I killed it. It's my wild turkey long branch. I had to look it up because my in-laws, I had known it was at Costco, and I sent them a picture. I said, if you see this there, can you grab it for me?
Hmm.
And it takes me a long time to drink a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah, you've had this forever.
October 22nd, 2021.
Okay,
So it took me just over a
over a
year to
year.
drink
Yeah.
it. Yeah. But I also have like 4 or 5 bottles of bourbon. So, I'll kind of mix it up. But yeah, so I killed it. The last slugs left in that bottle. And my wife said, can't you just buy more? I said, yeah, but it's the principle of it. It's gone. But it's tasty. It's a very good one. I highly recommend.
Now, do you generally drink it neat?
This had an ice cube in it.
Oh, okay, so just milk.
Yeah, just a tiny one. And this only got me an ounce and a half. Usually I'll pour 2 ounces as like a double is what
Yeah,
it's called.
yeah.
It takes me like an hour to drink a double. And I'll always put 1 ice cube in it. So I did in this one as well. Yeah.
So the reason I ask is because when you go to the website, the tagline is smoky, and they spell smoky without the E. So it's SMOKY, sort of like the difference between the whiskey with the EY and the whiskey
Yeah.
with the Y.
I like that.
Whiskey, sweet, tasty, neat. That's the tagline.
Well, and it is oak and Texas mesquite charcoal refined. So it's got an edge to it. It definitely has an edge to it. Um, but no, you know what? I sometimes here's what I'll do. The first drink that I have out of a new bottle, especially if it's a very good bottle, like a $40, for me, a $40 bottle of
Yeah,
bourbon
sure.
is good. Usually the first slug I have will be neat because I want to try it out first and say, okay, this is what it is, neat. And then the next time I have it, I'll do one with an ice cube in it, and then I can kind of tell the difference between the two.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, it's just a repeat of something I had a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the diet ginger beer and the mules. And I was actually asking Brad earlier today, I was saying, do you like any hot alcoholic or warm alcoholic beverages? Because I went to the doctor and I got like some throat issue. I think it's mostly post COVID, like that. I guess people technically have like a cough for a month or two after COVID. So I still have
Oh,
a little
wow.
bit of that. But she was saying that, some of it is also that I do a lot of podcasts. So probably when I was sick, I was probably doing all of my stuff still, and it probably
Yeah.
didn't help my throat. So she was telling me all these different things, and so I got some. You had talked about the throat coat tea, so I bought some of that. But then I was like, oh, maybe I'll have a warm drink. But then I was like, no, this is our one time to do the show, one time to have a beverage. I have to have it. I have to have it the way that I'm gonna like it. So got the mule, the
There you go.
and the ice cube and the bourbon. So it's a Kentucky mule with some ginger beer and a little bit of lemon. So we're
Well,
rolling.
ginger's got vitamin C, man.
Yeah.
So I think you're good to go. Yeah, I don't drink like I told you earlier. I something about hot and alcohol. I've tried it a few times. I put like a Irish coffee in my coffee before. I've put bourbon in my coffee. I've
Yeah.
tried all of those. Not a fan, but I've been told Irish coffees I guess there's a place in San Francisco that's famous for them.
Oh yeah. I think I've been there.
Down by the pier. Okay.
Yeah.
I've told I have to check those out. So
Yeah.
so one of these days when I'm down there, I'll try one of those and maybe I'll be a convert. But
If it's the same place that you're talking about, it was very fun spot. I really enjoyed it.
let me see if I can San Francisco famous Irish coffee. And it is called Buena Vista.
Yes, I think that's the one I went to.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So I've heard many good things.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about a couple of little news bits, and then we'll get out of here. And I think the first thing, Joc Pederson. So the Giants gave a qualifying offer to Carlos Rodon, and that is to when he leaves the team that signs him. The Giants get a pick, and does the team also lose like a pick if they sign somebody who's been signed to a qualifying offer or offered a qualifying offer? Sorry.
I'm not sure if they lose picks anymore. I think they're just comp picks.
Okay.
And that was part of the new thing because that was leaving free agents, type A free agents out there for so long. And I'm glad they got rid of that. Because I just don't think that should have been a rule. That was kind of a mess. Because then you're not going to the Pirates are definitely not going to sign anybody if you leave that rule in place.
Right. So we knew that Rodon, they were going to offer or extend him. Technically, the language is extend him a qualifying offer. And then they also extended Joc Pederson a qualifying offer. So what does that mean? Basically, if Pederson signs his qualifying offer, he will make $19.65 million. And he is only projected for like a 2 for 20, a 2 for 24, depending on which website you're looking at. And he can technically make that with just 1 year with the Giants and then go back into free agency next year. So it may be a smart play for him to just sign the 1 year deal and to just make sure that, just make sure he doesn't hurt himself and ruin next year. Yeah. But so the question is really, why would the Giants be interested in this? Because you would think, okay, well, why don't the Giants just, give him the best offer at $12 million a year, whatever it is? It seems like because, and this is my guess specifically, because of the designated hitter, and because a lot of these teams are doing this lefty righty stuff, if you have the defense, which is not the Giants, you can just put the guy as a DH and have him face right-handed pitching. And as we know, he was fantastic at that last year for the Giants. So this may be a way for the Giants to go, okay, we don't even want to get in the negotiation period. We don't want to lose the negotiation for this guy. So let's offer him the QO and then and let's put it in his court. So, it sounds like it would be very logical for him to sign that qualifying offer and just to come back for 1 more year. If he was a guy who was probably in the $15 million, $16 million range, he probably would forego that and sign a multi-year deal. But it seems like he's more in that 10 to 12. So it does make sense to just sign for 20, right?
Yeah, I think so. And when you look at it this way, so let's just say 20 million, let's round up 20 million, 6 million last year. The Giants, let's say he picks up, and again, the deadline is tomorrow, Tuesday. So by the time people are listening to this, probably it might have already happened. So you're looking at 26 million. And if he picks it up, the Giants essentially signed Joc Pederson last year to a 2-year, $13 million a year contract. That's pretty good for the output that they've gotten. 894 OPS versus righties. That's 10th all left-handed batters in major leagues with 250 more at-bats. Let me know if you've heard of these guys who are ahead of him. And there's only 9 ahead of him. Kyle Schwarber, Jose Ramirez.
I'll take him.
Shohei Ohtani.
I'll take him.
Bryce Harper. Rafael Devers. Juan Soto. Michael Harris 3.
Rookie of the year, Michael Harris,
Rookie of the year today. Freddie Freeman and Yordan Alvarez. Those are the only guys who had a higher OPS against righties last year as a left-handed hitter. So the $19 million kind of seems like a good deal, especially when you only had to pay him $6 million last year. So you haven't invested $20 million a year on this guy. It's just 1 year. It's a 1-year deal, and the Giants are flush with cash right now, especially because Rodon did not exercise his option to get out. So that's a free $22 million right there that the Giants have. They can still go out and get an Aaron Judge or offer an Aaron Judge. They can still go out and get pitching. They can still go out and get even another outfielder, because you can't have Joc Pederson play the outfield. If they sign Joc Pederson and they get a couple of outfielders, you can absolutely stick Joc Pederson at DH and find another right-handed batter that you can platoon at DH with him. I think it's a good deal. I mean, just and again, they knew it. They knew it when they offered him the qualifying offer that he could take it and they could be out $19 million. But you're not really out $19 million with a guy with an OPS like that against right-handed hitters.
Okay, so this is not a 100% yes, this is a good deal for Giants fans, because I put this on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And Marwan, who is he will often comment on questions like this. He said he hates that they extended the QO to Joc. He said it's really irresponsible for him to be in the type of shape that he was in. No hustle, zero defensive ability, slow and out of shape. Don't care if he can hit homers. He's lazy and a huge liability in the field. And he didn't think that a lot of those home runs mattered. Now, some of them were in spurts and stuff, so I can see how he says that. But he's very anti-Joc. And the way that I look at it, and I get where he's coming from, but the way that I look at it is kind of how you said it, which is, if the Giants come to this realization, which is, okay, maybe defense matters in baseball. Because last year they were like, you know what? Defense doesn't matter as long as you can score more runs than the other team. So we're just going to forego this defense stuff. But they didn't score as many runs as they thought they were going to score. And they didn't know that their pitchers were going to be so frustrated because Joc is, diving for balls that a random left fielder would just catch on his feet. And so if they come to this realization that, look, we need to have better outfield defense, and they pick up guys who are better defensive players, and Yastrzemski can play in right field, and he's really good in right field, and maybe Slater can play some late innings in left, and we get a center fielder, and all those things get fixed. Then you can just play him at DH, and you go, we're just paying this guy to hit right-handed pitching. That's it. And we're, like you said, we're going to get a right-handed hitter to face the left-handed pitching. And Joc is just going to be the pinch hitter for the right-handed reliever in that moment. And I think he may not be worth the $20 million based on that opportunity, but he is probably a little bit more valuable to the Giants on that end and worth the extra $5 million. Because as we know, the Giants saved so much money last year by not paying for those big guys. So they have the money to spend. They've said that they had the money to spend. They said that they are willing to spend the money. I don't mind paying him extra $5 million in this qualifying offer to do that. So I'm okay with it. And it makes sense if that is the way they're going about it. If they say, oh, yeah, we're going to play him in the field, then I'm like, what are you doing? Because the second you play him on the field, he loses so much value.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I would imagine there has been conversation that they said, we are going to extend you the qualifying offer. We're going to put it out there, but just know if you take this qualifying offer, there's a very good chance you probably will not be playing in the outfield.
Yes.
Unless it's an emergency situation.
You know where he can play, and I'd be fine with it. If he's a once every 2 weeks first baseman. I think I'd be fine with that.
I don't know if I've ever seen him play first base. But if in the major leagues, you can't really hide somebody there. But if you're talking about you've won 6 games in a row and you're going up against a right-handed pitcher, starting pitcher, and you really need him in the lineup, you want to extend the winning streak, you're cruising along. Yeah, put him at first base. You've already won the series. You're playing the Pirates. You're up. You've won the first 2 games of the series. Put him at first base for a day game. Let's see how it goes. A couple other things, Marwan. Listen up. 98th percentile in hard hit rate. 98th percentile in average exit velo. and no shift next year. So I'm okay. I'm okay with this. I definitely am okay with. I'm not okay with it if it is our big splash.
Yes.
If it's our big splash, I'm not okay with it.
Face of all the marketing. This
Ugh.
guy with bad
Yeah.
bleach job on his hair.
It might be a different color next year, though.
Yeah, maybe.
So let's not go too hard. And from the eye test, from what we saw last year, his base running, he seemed to be a smart base runner. I don't remember any base running gaffes.
He understands his limitations as a base runner.
Exactly. I didn't see any heat coming off of the wheels as he was, going from first to third. But I do remember smart base running. There wasn't anything crazy. So that part I can live with as well.
Quickly want to shout out my buddy Richard at R. I believe the way you pronounce his last name is Becerra, Becerra, 21 on Twitter. He and I talk about wrestling stuff every once in a while in another Facebook group, but he was really into the Willie Mays documentary. So we were kind of talking about it.
Awesome.
And then he saw us talking about our adult beverages. So he was getting pretty excited. So shout out to
cheers, Richard.
Thanks for checking in. Okay, so quickly, and we'll move on real quick, but I wanted to look up this qualifying offer thing. So you remember last year they said if the teams had come to, if the players and the owners came to an agreement on the implementation of the international draft, the QO system goes away, but they did not. So the QO system is in place for the next 5 years or whatever it is until the collective bargaining agreement is done. So I'll read this, and it's there's the language isn't very conversationally friendly, but I'll get through this quickly.
It's very lawyer-like.
Yes. In the QO system, clubs wishing to receive compensatory draft picks for the loss of a free agent can make a 1-year qualifying offer worth the mean salary of the MLB's 125 highest paid players. That's where you get to the 19.65 to their impending free agents prior to the onset of free agency, if and only if the players never received a QO before, so they couldn't do it to Brandon Belt again, or that player spent the entire season on that team's roster. In-season acquisitions are ineligible, so someone they may have traded for, they could not do that. So player can accept or decline, and during which time he can negotiate with other teams to survey his market value. If he accepts it, he's signed for the following year at that predetermined rate. If he rejects it, he is free to further explore the market. So compensation for losing players who reject their QO. So if Joc was to reject this and go elsewhere, if the team gives a qualifying offer to a player who then signs elsewhere, the club that lost a player is eligible for draft pick compensation. If the team that loses the free agent is a revenue sharing recipient based on its revenues and market size, then the selection, if and only if the lost player signs for at least $50 million, will be awarded a pick between the first round and the competitive balance round A of the 2022 draft. If the player signs for less than $50 million, the compensation pick would come after the competitive balance round B. So there's only 14 teams in that revenue sharing situation, and the Giants are not one of them.
No.
If the team that loses the player does not receive revenue sharing, it did not exceed the luxury tax threshold. So the Giants fit there. We know that they didn't come close to that tax. It's a compensatory pick that will come after the competitive balance round B. If the value of the player's contract doesn't matter in this case, the Giants are one of those teams. If the team that loses the player went over the luxury tax, which is Dodgers, Mets, Padres, Phillies, Red Sox, and Yankees, the pick will be after the fourth round. So Giants don't fit there. So penalties for signing players who reject their QO. So if someone signs Joc and Joc says, nope, sorry, Giants, I can get a better deal elsewhere, they are subject to the loss of one or more draft picks.
Okay.
The team's highest first-round pick is exempt And 3 tiers of draft pick forfeiture based on the financial stats of signing team are in place to serve as a penalty for signing a player who rejected a qualifying offer. So a team that exceeded the luxury tax will lose its second and fifth highest selections in the following year's draft, as well as $1 million from their international bonus pool. If such a team signs multiple qualifying offer free agents, it will forfeit its third and sixth remaining highest picks as well.
Jeez.
So those are only, again, the Dodgers and the Mets, the Padres, Phillies, Red Sox, Yankees, Giants do not fit there. What would if the Giants signed a player who rejected a qualifying offer, they would lose their third round pick, I believe. So something around there. But anyways, You get the picture. There is a bonus for teams who lose guys. So there's really, they're going to lose Rodon. And if Rodon signs, he's probably going to get a pretty good deal, right? If it's a multi-year deal. So the Giants should get a nice pick for him. And same with Joc, but I think that Joc's going to accept his. So there you go.
I think so, because I mean, yeah, he could, like we talked about, he could get, 3-year deal somewhere else. It's going to be lower average than obviously the 19 million, but it'll be higher total than 19 million. It's just a matter of, did he like his time in San Francisco? Did he like playing for Gabe Kapler? Does he think this team has a chance to make the playoffs this coming season? The only unfortunate thing for him is he can't wait past tomorrow to find out who they sign and how it all works out. So if he does, I wonder what happens if you decline it and then later on you sign with that team. Probably nothing happens, I would imagine. I mean, it's still within the team, so I can't imagine anything would happen at that point. But
I wonder if you can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I'm sure there's no there's no rule against you signing, decline with the Giants, but then sign with them 3 weeks later for a 3-year deal. Yeah, I don't know, but I think I think it would be a smart decision to take the qualifying offer, especially because he seemed to gel with the team last year. There are still players that are there, and Brandon Crawford, Yaz, Joey Bart. You still have the same pitching staff, most of the same pitching staff. So yeah, I could see him definitely taking the offer tomorrow.
All right, so Evan Longoria posted on Twitter. Not Twitter, Instagram. No, don't post on Twitter, Evan. It's a dark place right
now. Exactly. You never know what you're going to
get. So the Giants did not did not add him to the team on his $13 million option. They declined it. So he'll get the $5 million buyout instead. And one thing that I forgot about this is the Rays were paying about $2 million of that 13. So
yeah,
at least according to the McCovey Chronicles article by Brian Murphy. So it really would have been more like 11. So the Giants declined Evan Longoria for 11, and they're going to buy him out for 5. But it sounds like, because we talked about this. They could buy him out for 5, and then they can bring him back for 5 or whatever it is, right? That it's still under that 13 that he would have come back on. But he posted on Instagram, he said, "Thank you, San Francisco, for an incredible 5 years. The relationships I've made with this storied franchise will last a lifetime. There's so many people to thank, and I hope all of them know when I type this, I'm forever grateful for your dedication to me and this team. My family and I always appreciated the love and support this fan base showed every day and night. We will miss you. Thank you, thank you, thank you." This sounds like he doesn't believe he's coming back.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I don't think you usually write something like that and then 2 or 3 weeks later
he's like, "Psych. Tricked you guys."
Yeah, sign back with the Giants. I mean, is there a chance he's saying goodbye to baseball at that point?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, because usually you don't really close the door on a team unless management has said 100% we're not re-signing you. It's just not going to happen. I mean, Giants at third base have Wilmer Flores, JD Davis, VR. Casey Schmidt was in AAA this year at the end of the season.
Bring back Bill Miller out of retirement.
There you go, Bill Miller. You've got Charlie Hayes. I mean, there's so many to choose from. so I mean, the Giants are flush at third base right now. And is he the right-handed platoon with Joc Pederson? No, I think it's time to move on from some players from the last couple of seasons. Evan Longoria is unfortunately one of them.
I thought the same thing that you just said right now, which is, well, maybe he's the right-handed platoon at the DH, but then I remembered that's what JD Davis is for.
Yeah, right? Exactly. That's exactly what JD Davis is for. And Wilmer Flores, again, another right-handed. VR, another right-hander. I mean, they have so many right-handed third basemen. There's just not the room for a player like Evan Longoria at this point, which I understand. They've got to move on. They've got to move on at some point. And he was a fantastic Giant. 70 of his 331 home runs for his career are tied to the Giants, and they will be for the rest of his career. Does he go back to Tampa Bay? Maybe, like a 1-year deal, just kind of close out his career right off into the sunset. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about him like he's done, but he hit fairly well the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
injuries.
Yeah, he just can't shake the injury stuff, and maybe being a DH full time or half the time, facing lefties less than half the time, maybe that will help him last a couple more years. And Giants probably have that in JD Davis. JD Davis, he's not great at third, but at least he can play a little bit there, here and there. I don't know. The Giants have to sort of figure out how they want to deal with this defense thing, because they have 2 years of just saying defense. What are you talking about, defense?
We'll throw our dogs out there and see what happens.
So before we get out of here, there were 2 players that we kind of want to just mention here. And one of them, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing this right, Kodai Senga. He is a right-handed pitcher in the. Is he from the Nippon League?
He is, yes. Yeah. Both the players we're going to talk about are. Yeah.
Okay, so he is. So the reason why his name came up is because somebody. I don't know who Mark DeLucci is. Do you know who Mark DeLucci is?
I've heard the name. I've heard the name quite a few times over the years. Yeah.
Managing editor of a fan nation site called Giants Insider. So he took a photo. He was passing by Oracle Park, and I always want to call it Pac Bell Park. Still, it hasn't been Pac Bell Park forever. But he was passing by, and he took a photo of the Tron, the scoreboard in center field. And he said that it was illuminated with Kodai Senga in a Giants uniform with the number 41. It's been reported that they are interested in the free agent righty, and seems like a visit is imminent. So much like has happened with Shohei and other players, in that the Giants are often a pretty good place for these Japanese players to negotiate with. It seems like he's going to be or they are on his list as well, which is great. He was 18th, ranked 18th in Keith Law, his list of free agents. And they do need a replacement for Rodon. I don't know if he will be that replacement, but he does have a pretty hard fastball. He posted in his career a 28.2 K rate and 9.3 walk rate, which the writer on the McCovey Chronicles, Brian Murphy, you mentioned him already, he said is a comp to someone like Charlie Morton. The pitch mix, he said, though, makes him a lot more like Alex Cobb. So that is pretty interesting. And this is someone who may be on their radar, maybe in Giants news over the rest of the hot stove period of the season right now. So someone to keep an eye on. I don't know too much about him. I do know that he struck out Buster Posey in a World Baseball Classic game, though.
Yeah, exactly. And anytime you strike out Buster Posey, you definitely get you get noted, especially by Giants fans. Joel Sherman from the New York Post did say, you know, it had some downside to him because of course the Yankees are looking at him also. A lot of teams are looking at him. He needs to improve his breaking ball in the major leagues. He's also being kind of maybe pinpointed as a reliever, seventh, eighth inning guy, maybe even a closer. He, you know, in the Japanese leagues, they pitch every sixth day. If he's a starter here, it's every fifth day. I don't think he's ever pitched more than about 180 innings in his 10-year career, more than 180 innings in one season in the Japanese leagues. I guess they have tackier baseballs, stickier baseballs in Japan. I know the United States is the Major League Baseball is experimenting with that. Don't know if that's going to be this year, but he also does train with Yu Darvish in the off season here in the United States, so he has thrown with that baseball. So yeah, interesting to keep an eye on. I love that picture. I mean, the picture was fantastic on Twitter, where you zoom in, you pinch zoom in really close, and you could see his name and his picture up on the big board, the big scoreboard at Oracle. That was really cool. I thought, oh, we got a little scoop. That's kind of cool.
And a few days ago, Grant Brisbee wrote a free agent profile on another Japanese player named Masataka Yoshida, and he's an outfielder. And the thing that stands out about him is that his walk to strikeout ratio was the highest for the league last year, like by far. Like he almost doubled everybody else in that. But then Grant also said, "Oh, guess who was the 2020 who had the best ratio? Oh, that is Tommy La Stella." So we know how that worked out.
Yeah, it didn't.
No.
At all. Yeah, that would be a good one. We do need outfielders, although the rub on Yoshida is that his fielding is not fantastic, and we already have that, right?
Oh,
we already have bad fielding.
He just broke my heart.
I know. So that's the one thing. He would definitely be a DH. He's a right-handed hitter. We're kind of already in that market. I believe he's a right-handed hitter, right? I got to look it up now. I don't want to get that wrong. But you know, he has played DH mostly. No, actually, he's a left-handed hitter.
Yes.
So there may not even be room with the Giants in that situation, because he played mostly DH in the Japanese leagues the last few years. But he does have some pretty good power, and he's a 330 hitter, a 2-to-1 walk to strikeout rate. And that would be phenomenal. I know the Giants love to have guys who can get on base. And if you could hit 330 and you could walk and you've got a little bit of pop, 20 home runs a year over there, over here, does that translate? I don't know. Are the Giants willing to take a chance on a 28-year-old coming over? They should. I mean, you know, maybe for a year or two. But again, guys who are coming over from Japan, I'm sure they're not looking to sign a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming here to sign a 5 or 6-year deal because they want to be here to stay and they want to be with one club.
What did Suzuki sign last year? 4-year?
I think it was a 5. I think that's kind of what pushed it over the top, is Chicago gave him a 5-year deal. So, yeah.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. Episode 125, by the way. Can you imagine?
Wow.
We've done 125 episodes of this show.
Well, that's fitting. 25 bonds.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about a lot today, so yeah.
Pretty amazing that we've been doing this for that long. So, all right. So, for Brad, I'm Double G. We'll see you next week. Peace out.
Peace.